Welcome back from Pilot Training Solutions. This time we're going to tackle shooting an NDB approach. We have not gone over any of this material yet, as we try not to interfere with what your instructor teaches you. But because so many of you subscribers and of our customers have asked us to, we will start tackling the flight portion of your training as well as the ground portion. So without further ado, here is how to properly shoot an NDB approach. Today we're going to start with a terminal NDB approach into Friday Harbor in Washington. Why an NDB approach to start with, you might ask? Well, for one, because most people believe it is the most difficult, and two, because it's probably the least used, therefore the one you would probably have the most difficulties accomplishing. If you noticed, I said terminal approach at the beginning. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the terminology, a terminal approach is one where the radio station is located directly on the airport, and this makes for an easier approach. A non-terminal approach is where the radio station is not located directly over the airport, but rather a few miles away, generally between 5 and 10. The approaches are conducted the same way, with 2 or 3 main differences between the two. First, on the terminal approach, the outbound leg will generally be a little longer, 3 minutes instead of 2. Second, the final approach fix on the terminal approach is generally 10, 10, and clear, within 10 miles of the station, within 10 degrees of final approach course, and cleared for the approach. On a non-terminal approach, it's generally an actual fix, defined by a distance, a GPS fix, a radial, etc. And the third thing is that the terminal approach's missed approach point is the passage of the station itself, while on a non-terminal approach, it's usually again a time, a distance, a radial, a fix. And now that you know that, let's actually go and shoot this approach. Okay, taking a look at the approach plate, let's say we're coming from the north at 4,000 feet, and the controller advises us to proceed from Buick for the full approach with the following clearance once we reach Buick. PTS 412, Papa Tango Sierra 412. Fly direct to Friday Harbor NDB, maintain 4,000 feet until established, cleared for the full NDB runway 34 into Friday Harbor. There is one fundamental additional thing that you need to do more often on an NDB approach. I mean, you should be doing this for IFR in any case, but on an NDB approach it takes a whole new level of importance. Realigning the head indicator with the compass. Not doing so will probably cause you to fail your check ride, and most importantly, may cost you one day your life. To stay safe on the approach, you need to stay within full deflection. Generally, on a non-precision approach, that means staying within 10 degrees of the final approach course. On a VOR, a GPS, an ILS approach, it's fairly simple. If the needle goes full deflection, you go missed. But on an NDB approach, a full deflection is when the needle is more than 10 degrees to either side. Now, if the DG and the compass are aligned, staying within 10 degrees will keep you safe. But as shown by the animation, if your DG has precessed, you have not realigned it, staying within 10 degrees will be just as deadly as continuing to fly a VOR approach with a full deflection. Instead of being on the final approach course, you could be anywhere, including stuck on an antenna somewhere. So, the first thing we need to do while heading to the NDB is realign the DG, the heading indicator, with the compass. Now, because we're already at 4,000 feet, all we need to do until we reach the station is keep the needle centered. And for this approach, let's consider the winds as negligible. So we just fly our heading of 146 until the needle flips. When it does, you need to do something that you should do as many times as possible while in IFR. Go through something I call the 7 T's. Turn, time, twist, throttle, talk, track, and finally, tires, if you're flying on an RG. Most of the time, you will only need to do a couple of these, and maybe just one, but it's always a good idea to go through them all anytime we alter one of them. Let's see what I mean. Turn. Yes, to the outbound course. Our new course is 159 for the outbound leg. Time. Yes, we will be starting our timer, which we should have set to about 3 minutes, as that is generally the time for the outbound leg on a terminal approach. As we mentioned earlier, the time really depends on your speed, as you need to remain within 10 nautical miles of the NDB, as shown by the approach plate. At a normal approach of 90 knots, and with negligible winds, we will definitely be within 10 nautical miles. But if we're flying at a higher speed or have a strong tailwind, we might have to go less than 3 minutes. If you have a strong headwind, you might have to go more than 3 minutes. Twist. If you have a movable card ADF and wish to do so, you would twist it to 159. Throttle. Yes, as long as we remain established on the outbound course, we can descend to 2,300 feet. Talk? Why not? Let's tell the traffic area you are overflying the airport for the full NDB runway 34 and will be on a 5-mile final for runway 34 in about 5 minutes. That way, even the VFR pilots unfamiliar with IFR terminology are advised of your intentions. Track? Oh yeah. Keep the tail of the needle within 10 degrees of the top of the instrument to stay protected and on course. And finally, tires. Not now, but if you were flying an RG, you will need to extend the gear at the final approach fix. It really doesn't matter where you extend the gear. You could be extending the gear here, but for simplicity and for repetition purposes, you always want to extend the gear at the same point on approach so you don't forget. Extending it at the final approach fix generally is like a checklist. It's repetition. It's something that you will not forget to do. So, as we're flying the outbound leg, all we need to do is wait for the timer to hit 0, or 3 minutes if counting up, and keep the tail of the needle within 10 degrees of the top of the instrument. After 3 minutes, rinse and repeat the 7 T's. This time we're only going to do a couple. We're going to turn and we're going to time. We're going to turn to 114 for the procedure turn and time for a minute. When that minute is up, again, the 7 T's. Only one this time. Turn for a right turn of 180 degrees to a heading of 294. You're always going to turn away from the airport to give you more time to get established on final. If you made a left turn and the wind was strong, it would push you towards the airport, and you might have to go missed before even starting the approach. So you always want to turn away from wherever the airport is. Now, what we need to do is wait to be within 10 degrees of the final approach to again repeat the 7 T's process. But how do we know when we are within 10 degrees of the final approach course on an NDB? Well, the final approach course is the 339 degree. And if we look for that number on the heading indicator, is 45 degrees to your right. Approaches are always made in such a way that you will be intercepting the final approach course inbound at a 45-degree angle. This is one of the reasons why most navigational instruments have markings on the 45-degree points, as you can see from the animation. There is one on the DG, there is one on the ADF. There is also on the VORs, if you've seen our other videos. For us to be established on final, the needle has to be within 10 degrees of the 45-degree right marker, as that would indicate that you are within full deflection. So the needle needs to be within 10 degrees of the right 45 marker. Once you become confident with your skills, there is a better way of doing this, and that is to visualize the DG and ADF as one instrument. What I mean is mentally move the needle from the ADF to the heading indicator, thus creating an RMI, a radio magnetic indicator. Or you could always install an RMI on your airplane if you're going to fly outside the US often. Every time I make a video on an NDB, people start complaining, saying, well, nobody uses it anymore, they're pieces of junk, and so. It's true. But if you fly outside the US, you're going to be doing a lot of NDB work. Now, if you're going to fly with your airplane and you have your G1000 installed and whatever, well, then you're still going to fly GPSs. But if one day you're going to rent an airplane in, who knows, South Africa, that's not going to have a G1000, chances are. So you're probably going to have to fly something with old instruments. And what are the chances that you're going to be doing that? Very slim, okay. But does it hurt to have the knowledge? I don't think so. It never hurts to have too much knowledge. If you can visualize the needle in your heading indicator, everything becomes so much easier, especially when dealing with the knowledge test questions. For that, you can look at our knowledge test question tricks on the NDB. If we move the needle here, we can clearly see where it is in relation to our final approach course of 339, making our life and this kind of approach much easier. When the needle drops within 10 degrees of 339, we are established on the final approach course. But let's move on. Technically, you could start descending to your MDA of 800 feet as soon as the needle is within that 10-degree area. But it is much safer to be established on final before commencing our final descent. So when we are about 5 degrees off, we can again go through our 7 T's. We turn to 339, our final approach course. But before we go through the rest of them, we need to go back to what I said at the beginning. We need to realign our DG to our compass. And there you have it. That piece of fecal matter DG had precessed nearly 10 degrees during the approach, and continuing on this heading could turn out to be disastrous. So we realign the DG with the compass and readjust our heading and can finally proceed with the rest of the T's. Time? Not needed. It's a terminal approach, remember? We will go missed when the needle flips. Twist. Again, if you wish to, you can twist the ADF card to the final approach course of 339. Throttle? Yes, we are established and can descend to our MDA of 800 feet. Talk? Definitely. Let them know you are on a long final for runway 34. Track? Keep that needle within 10 degrees of the top, or you have to go missed. Tires? Oh yes. Time to extend that landing gear, if you're flying on an RG. Now it's just a matter of waiting for that needle to flip to go missed if this is a practice approach, or for the airport to come into sight if you're actually trying to land there. Again, if this is a practice approach, once the needle flips, you would proceed on the missed approach with a climb to 1,200 feet, followed by a climbing right turn to 2,400 feet back to the NDB and hold. So, let's recap the important things. First, again, it is fundamental during an NDB approach to keep checking that the DG has not precessed too much and align it constantly with the compass, at least when actually tracking the needle, so on the outbound leg and on the inbound leg. Second, anytime you change something in IFR, chances are something else also needs to be changed, so make sure you go through the 7 T's every time. And finally, a word of advice. For the check ride and training, the practical test standards, the PTS, say that you need to hold the MDA plus 100 feet minus 0. So there is no escaping those limitations. But once you get your license, take your time before descending to the MDA. What I mean is always add a couple hundred feet to that number until you are actually well experienced. Flying below MDA can and eventually will kill you. Flying 200 feet above it, the worst case, will mean you need to go to a different airport, and that is just fine. There is absolutely no reason to land there. There are plenty of other airports nearby. Go somewhere where the weather is better. Your life is definitely worth it. Well, if you like the way we teach, consider going to our website, passfaexams.com, and see how we can help you become a better and safer pilot. For those of you that love learning on your iPad, the apps from Pilot Training Solutions are finally coming out one at a time. The Private Pilot Check Ride Prep is already out on the App Store. The Instrument Check Ride is just awaiting approval, should be out within a couple of days. The Knowledge Test Prep apps are about to be submitted to the App Store. And we're also considering making an app for shooting approaches to give you a quick breakdown of every approach, like the one on this video. Until next time, we at Pilot Training Solutions, as usual, wish you happy flying and blue skies.